It's very simple. The entire philosophy of this Liberal government for the last 50 years is putting the needs of criminals before the needs of victims and community safety. It's an ideology that is whacked.
It's whacked. Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Larry Brock is one of the best speakers in the House of Commons, very engaging. He's going to be our next Attorney General, and he's fighting for Canadians. Let's take a look at his presentation this morning on the House of Commons floor. Like, share, subscribe. Larry Brock is definitely one to watch.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
It's whacked.
Debate. The Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to advise I'll be sharing my time with the member from Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, it's always a pleasure to rise on behalf of the great citizens of Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations. I rise today in strong support of our Conservative motion calling on the government to end the failed experiment of leniency and to adopt a common-sense 3 strikes and you're out law so that the worst repeat violent offenders serve real time, not living room sentences, and so communities are finally safe again. For 10 long years, this Liberal government has put the interests of criminals ahead of the safety and dignity of victims. They have prioritized the rights of repeat offenders over the safety of law-abiding Canadians. I say this as someone who served nearly 2 decades as a Crown attorney. I have looked victims in the eye. I have sat with families shattered by repeat offenders who should never have been back on the street. Over those years, the offenders I saw grew more dangerous and more emboldened because the system kept signaling that the consequences were optional. Now, this soft-on-crime philosophy did not begin with these Liberals. Its roots stretch back more than 50 years when Pierre Trudeau's Liberal government openly declared its intent to stress the rehabilitation of individuals rather than the protection of society, even if it involved community risk. And Canadians have now been paying the price for those risks ever since. The Young Offenders Act dramatically reduced sentences, even for those convicted of murder. Statutory release shortened jail time by 1/3, and parole policies make a mockery of sentences pronounced in court. Today, full parole can come as early as 1/3 of a sentence, and unescorted temporary absences as early as 1/6. The practical effect of this Liberal philosophy was clear. The faint hope of rehabilitating an offender was elevated over denouncing unlawful conduct, deterring crime, or protecting society. And the result has been a revolving door of hardened criminals arrested, released, and reoffending, leaving victims to suffer the consequences.
Shame.
That is why the Conservative government of Stephen Harper worked to restore balance to our justice system, re-establishing the importance of denunciation, deterrence, and the protection of society. But these Liberals spent the past decade undoing that progress, scrapping mandatory minimums for serious gun crimes, making bail even easier to obtain, and carrying on the soft-on-crime legacy. This became crystal clear in 2019 when the Liberals passed Bill C-75. Amongst other things, it legislated a principle of restraint that pushes release at the earliest opportunity on the least restrictive terms. That may sound tidy in a briefing note, but in real life, it tilted the system away from public safety. The Department of Justice itself describes the bill's goal as timely release with the least onerous conditions. Then came the notorious Bill C-5 in 2022. This law repealed mandatory minimum penalties for dozens of serious offenses that were constitutionally upheld and brought back conditional sentence orders, what most Canadians now call house arrest. At the time, then Liberal Justice Minister David Lametti said the Liberals were turning the page on a failed Conservative criminal justice policy. But what did that really mean? It meant making conditional sentences possible for serious offenses like sex assault, kidnapping, human trafficking, even fentanyl trafficking, and robbery with a violence. These are not small crimes. They are violent, scarring, life-altering offenses. Imagine telling a victim of kidnapping that their attacker can now serve a sentence from the comfort of their own living room. That is the reality Bill C-5 created. When the public backlash grew, the Liberals tried to save face then with Bill C-48. The then Justice Minister, Arif Virani, promised it would make Canadians safer, but then admitted, in his own words, that he cannot measure what exactly that would look like. That is not a plan, that's simply a press release. And when those reforms failed, Liberal ministers tried to pass the buck. We heard the Public Safety Minister, who was the Justice Minister at the time, say, quote, "The bail system is sound," end of quote. We saw Liberal ministers and this Prime Minister blame provinces, telling premiers to step up while refusing to fix their failed criminal code policies they themselves broke. Canadians don't want a blame game. They want a justice system that works and is fair. Madam Speaker, it's not just Conservatives sounding the alarm. For years, police chiefs, premiers, mayors from across the country have been begging this Liberal government to fix the mess. They have been obstructionist ever since, Madam Speaker. The Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police said the changes were urgently needed to stop violent repeat offenders from cycling through communities. The Toronto Police Association repeatedly warned of the dangers of letting repeat violent offenders back on the streets. Mayors in Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Toronto have all publicly pressed for real reform because their citizens are living with the consequences every single day. All 13 premiers from across party lines signed joint letters to the federal government demanding immediate action, yet the government continued its obstructionist ways. They dug in, they defended its failed laws, and ignored those voices from the very same stakeholders they should have been listening to. What has been the result? The numbers don't lie. Since 2015, crime has exploded across all categories. Extortion alone, over 300% increase. Now, these are not just statistics. They represent real Canadians whose lives have been shattered by violence. Consider the Saskatchewan tragedy in 2022. Miles Sanderson, already out on statutory release after 59 convictions. 59, let that sink in, went on a rampage, killing 11 people and injuring 17 more. If he had been kept in jail, as common sense dictates, those families would still have their loved ones today. In Peel Region, police arrested 18 individuals tied to home invasions, armed robberies, and carjackings. Shockingly, half of them were out on release at the time. In Vancouver, police reported that just 40 prolific repeat offenders were arrested more than 6,000 times in a single year. That, by definition, Madam Speaker, is the revolving door justice system. And that is why, if this Liberal government were truly serious about tackling violent crime, they would adopt the Conservative plan for 3 strikes and you're outlaw. Here's what it means in practice. When someone has been convicted of 3 serious violent offenses, they will no longer be able to serve their time at home or walk out with probation. No more conditional sentences, no more house arrests. Instead, they will face a mandatory minimum period of incarceration of 10 years, with the possibility of life in prison depending on the severity of their crimes. They will be designated as dangerous offenders, which means they would not be released until they can actually prove they are no longer a threat to the public. And if they ever want to earn back their freedom, they will have to show it. That means spotless behavior, clean drug tests, and real steps towards rehabilitation. The principle is simple. 3 serious violent crimes means you've shown society you cannot be trusted to walk free. You will serve real time, not living room sentences. That, Madam Speaker, is how you effectively protect communities, restore faith in the justice system, and finally put victims ahead of repeat violent offenders. Madam Speaker, Canadians are tired of Liberal governments that coddle criminals and abandon victims. The motion says enough is enough. It ends the failed approach to Bill C-75 and 5. It responds to the pleas of police, premiers, and mayors. It gives Crown attorneys and judges the tools they need to keep dangerous offenders where they belong, behind bars. Most importantly, it restores the fundamental duty of any federal government, and that's to keep Canadians safe. Madam Speaker, Canadians want their children to walk to school without fear. They want seniors to feel safe in their homes. They want women to know that their abusers won't be back on their doorstep the very next day. They want law-abiding citizens put before repeat violent offenders. Conservatives are bringing forward this motion because Canadians deserve more than excuses. They deserve more than obstructionist ways. They deserve safety, first and simple.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Opponent to Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I would question a number of the motivations and even some of the facts that the member has actually put on the record. I think what we do know, Madam Speaker, is in the last federal election, Canadians elected a new Prime Minister that understands the community concerns in regard to crime and safety. The new Prime Minister has made it very clear that we are going to be seeing bail reform legislation this fall, Madam Speaker. Members know that full well, but it doesn't stop Conservatives from, as much as possible, milking Canadians through email blasts to try to raise money on crime, Madam Speaker. My question to the member is, why does the member not acknowledge that we are, in fact, going to be seeing bail reform, because he knows full well we have a Prime Minister that's committed to be bringing it in this fall?
Well, member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Our current Prime Minister, that particular member, all the previous members of the Justin Trudeau government, even the new members of this particular Liberal government, have obstructed every opportunity for us to advance common sense solutions to deal with the criminal justice system. For the last 10 years, you have continually, through Madam Speaker, he has continually prioritized the needs and the comfort of criminals at the expense of community safety and victims. So this Prime Minister has had over 5 months to introduce this legislation. Why are we waiting as long as it is? Community safety is not a partisan issue. I keep repeating that right across this country. Why have they waited as long as they have when the last 4 years every major stakeholder said, do your job?
The Honourable Member for Shefford.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his speech. And my question really comes in a spirit of non-partisanship. The question is about increasing crime. It's a concern that we have in the bloc, and more personally, as the critic for status of women, I see the increasing crimes against women, and that's why I tabled a motion, which will be the first motion at the FIWO committee this fall. We're going to be studying, among other things, whether women are truly adequately protected by the justice system. So it's in a spirit of non-partisanship. My motion could even be amended. Now, my question for my colleague is, will they take into account the serious study that the FIWO committee will be doing? The Honourable Member.
I thank my colleague for that excellent question. Women, when I classify victims, I highlight women across this country have long felt that there is absolutely no justice to our system. They view it as a legal system because for 10 plus years they have long been abandoned in the process. The sentencing guidelines are not reflecting the true gravity of intimate partner violence. So to answer my colleague's question, absolutely, we will prioritize victims, particularly women, of intimate partner violence to ensure that their offenders are sanctioned appropriately, meaningfully, so that it has not only a denunciation impact, but it also has a deterrent impact.
Member for Caribou Prince George.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank our honourable colleague for his tireless efforts in this on this file. Madam Speaker, you cannot open up social media, turn on the TV, radio, or newspaper to see another violent offender, repeat offender being released and wreaking havoc in our communities. In my riding at Caribou Prince George, I think of Mr. Bob Hubbard, a senior who returned home last fall to find his house being robbed. When he tried to stop the robbers, they ran over him with his own vehicle, dragging him and leaving him for dead. Within hours, they were caught, and within hours, they were turned loose. Through you, Madam Speaker, why is it that this Liberal government continues their obstructionist ways and refusing or continuing to put the rights of violent offenders before average or everyday Canadian citizens?
Brief answer from the Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant, South Six Nation.
Fantastic question. It's very simple. The entire philosophy of this Liberal government for the last 50 years is putting the needs of criminals before the needs of victims and community safety. It's an ideology that is whacked.
Oh, yeah. Can't argue with that, Larry. It is whacked. Carney is pulling our country apart, ripping it apart on purpose for the benefit of Brookfield and his own bottom line. My name's Aaron. We're exposing these Liberals. Like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching this one. Ciao for now. We'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching, gang. Oh, yeah.